Hello and welcome back to another Warlords of Draenor video. So this time I'm going to be examining the Garrison feature that's coming in the expansion. This particular video is going to be the top 5 cons, the things that could be better, or perhaps my top 5 concerns about the feature. I am going to be doing a top 5 or top whatever pros video to, cover the really awesome bits. However, since it's the beta, I think the most important thing is to start talking about feedback on, offering suggestions and various little things like that. Now, also, the top 5 cons video is probably going to be a good bit longer than the pros one. That's just because this also incorporates doing some suggestions and things like that. So with the intro out of the way, let's start talking about the cons. Now, coming in at number 5, we have one that actually concerns the future. Don't worry, this is the only non-sort of Warlords of Draenor part of the list. Now, Garrisons are currently, as we know, the main, headline Warlords of Draenor feature. So what happens when we move into the next expansion? If Garrisons are going to be kept, then how will Blizzard handle it? I mean, sure, they could just reset the Garrison and make us build a new one that's maybe a little bit different, but honestly, I think that would feel like them just kind of sweeping the rug out from under us, and then while we're on the ground, trying to rub our eyes out and get ready again, they just sort of take all our toys away, which wouldn't be too good. Now, what I think they could also do is just port our Garrison to the new expansion location. But if they did that, how would they add in progression? Well, honestly, this is a bit of a tricky problem. Personally, I think that what they should do is add a 4th level to the Garrison, along with some new gameplay features, so perhaps something like Garrison PvP and Guild Garrisons. Now, you've got to remember that Garrisons were the headline new feature in Warlords of Draenor. In subsequent expansions, they won't be, so it's totally fine for Blizzard to just, keep the feature going by maybe adding a 4th level to the Garrison or doing something like that. Now, one final concern that I have on this topic is just from patch to patch, how are Blizzard going to add new content to the Garrison feature that actually involves a little bit of progression? It's perhaps going to be a little bit problematic if we just max out our 6.0 Garrison by the time that, say, patch 6.1 comes out, and then really, what are we going to do? I'd say a lot of people would just stop being bothered with the Garrison feature. I mean, why go there every 3 hours or 4 hours to do Garrison missions when there's not much to gain from it? That's certainly a little bit of a concern, but it's not really the main focus of this video. I just thought that I'd get this out of the way for the 5th point. The other points in this video are going to be a lot more important, I can guarantee you. So, with all that said, let's move on to number 4. And that is the fact that there are no guild garrisons or any PvP stuff, currently. Now, these could very easily be their own topics, but in my opinion, there's a lot of overlap between the two. First, let's talk about the guild stuff. So, guilds have never really had somewhere to call their own in World of Warcraft, and in my opinion, a guild garrison would fix that. It would quite literally be a place in the world that your guild can call home. Also, there could be customization options which are tied to your guild's PvE or PvP progress. That would be great because it would actually give you a physical representation of your progress that is, say, beyond just the armor that your own character wears. So I think that would really be nice. And then finally, it would facilitate guild versus guild garrison PvP in perhaps a attack-defend format. And I think that that would be an awesome feature. Now, I'm mainly a PvE player, but I don't care. The idea of attacking someone else's garrison with a small army is just badass, right? So that would be cool. Now, one concern about guild garrisons that Blizzard talked about was that it could essentially just become an officers' club. I think this is an okay risk, though. There is a lot of choice when it comes to selecting guilds, and of course, now that guild leveling has been removed, the barrier to entry to actually creating a new guild and having it be successful should be vastly reduced in the new expansion. So really, that's not much of a problem. If you want to create your own communist monarchy within World of Warcraft, or maybe your own super democratic happy land, then you can go and do it. There's nothing stopping you. It's not like you are going in at maybe a level 2 garrison, which means that no one will or level 2 guild, which means that no one's actually going to try to, join up, because why do that when they could just go to the shiny level 25 guild with lots of perks? That's not going to be an issue anymore. It's going to be far more flexible in that regard. Now, a garrison itself could be just a testament to your guild's achievement, and that would be a really cool thing. It would be far better than a crappy guild reward vendor, which is what we currently have. So overall, there's just nothing but pluses here in my opinion, and the negatives aren't really too bad. Now, of course, if they added too much gameplay around a guild garrison feature, then they could get back to that guild perk dilemma where you're just going to go to the guild that's got the most perks or the biggest garrison. So as long as they balance things out there, it would really just be totally fine. I mean, I don't think there are going to be many people who are going to choose a guild purely based on how swanky their garrison is. I don't think there should be much gameplay involved with just your own character. I think that the guild garrison should just be about hanging out with your guild in a cool place that's customized and personalized to your own guild. So with all that stuff covered, let's talk about guild PvP, because honestly, this is the awesome badass thing that I just want to happen so much. Alright, so, guild versus guild sieges really seem like the ideal place to start when you're talking about guild versus guild PvP when each guild owns a garrison. I'm a firm believer that PvP players deserve more than what they currently get in World of Warcraft. I mean, sure, BGs and arenas are fine, and Ashran is certainly a great addition, but if you compare that to a new raid tier and PvE island every patch, I still think that PvP players are getting the short end of the stick, which is unfortunate. Really, in terms of various kinds of PvP gameplay, the more the merrier as far as I'm concerned. Now just think about how cool a garrison siege could be. You know, you could have the cannons on the walls, the siege engines, people lugging up bombs to destroy the gate, and I'd say that you could even have lots of NPCs involved, basically acting like creep waves. That would be really cool. I mean, imagine just leading the main attack in the front gate, or being involved in some sort of sneak attack through the mine, or perhaps sallying forth out of the gates to defend yourself. Lots of really cool things there that just fit in with the fantasy of a game like this. You don't have to be a role player to find some of this stuff cool. You just have to be someone who perhaps enjoyed Lord of the Rings and, you know, wants to do some badass stuff in your medieval fantasy game. I think that's totally awesome. And then once you get into the opponent's garrison, right, you could start destroying buildings. So maybe you could take out their barracks to stop the creep waves from spawning. Or maybe you could destroy the mage tower to prevent their mage NPCs from getting their mana back. Perhaps if you destroy their armory, then their new creep waves that spawn don't have as good weapons. There's lots of really awesome stuff that you can do there. And then at the end of it all, you could be scored based on how well your attack or defense goes. This could go on a realm or region leaderboard. You could have matchmaking and various things like that. It would just be so cool challenging a horde guild and then going off to battle. There is so much potential here, there really is. Now, of course, I think that if they were doing this fully, then they'd really have to just spice things up. Because if it was just the same kind of siege that happens time and time and time again, then people will just get bored of the whole thing. I'm not too sure how this would be done, but I think it would be really important that just each match has at least the potential of feeling drastically different. So yeah, there's Guild Garrison PvP. Obviously, if I were to fully talk about this feature and outline it, it would take a full video, but that's just a little TLDR summary of how I think it would be badass. Now, as for regular Garrison PvP with your own personal Garrison, well, I think this is actually sort of hard to do right. Now, sure, you could do Garrison PvP that's either a 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, or 5v5 format, but this would just feel like an arena with lots of NPCs and objectives that would just, in my opinion, take away from the purity of small format PvP. There's a reason why people like 3v3s. It's just you and five other people, and it's a game of skill and wits. That is what's really attractive about that small format, and I don't think that would carry itself into a siege very well, even if there is extensive use of NPCs. So I think it would be fine just to have this as a guild-only thing. After all, it is an MMO, and if you wanted to have some sort of garrison attack-defend thing, well, that could be done in a PvE context. Maybe there could be little mini-bosses to fight instead of players or something like that. It wouldn't have to be as elaborate as a PvP garrison siege. Anyway, so that's really point 4 covered. There's no guild or PvP stuff in with garrisons, and I think it is a missed opportunity. Hopefully that comes in a subsequent expansion or a subsequent patch. Alright then, time for point number 3, and that is the fact that garrisons are stuck in one zone. Now this is a bit of an interesting one. I'm not sure whether this is a pro or a con, and it might even end up in the pro list as well. So I think one very major con is that there is a absolute lack in player freedom when it comes to where you put your garrison. There are a lot of zones in Warlords of Draenor, and I feel that they are all very different and uniquely awesome. You know, Frostfire Ridge looks different to Gorgrond, which looks different to Shadowmoon Valley, which is a night and day difference between, say Nagrand. They all look different, they're all awesome, and people are diverse, people like different things, so really a lot of people are going to like different zones, and I don't think that there is really a good reason to limit our choice in this regard. Sure, Frostfire Ridge and Shadowmoon Valley are nice, but there could be someone who, say, prefers Talador. I'd say that personally, I would ideally have had my Garrison in Talador or Nagrand, because I just think those zones are more fitting with what I personally enjoy. Now, Blizzard has said that they decided to go with their current direction because they were trying to integrate Garrisons with the questing experience and make it a whole big lovely story thing. Now, this is fair enough, right? And it does have some positive effect. I'm not going to go into that now, but what I'll say is that having played through Shadowmoon Valley, the effect of my Garrison was not massive. It served as the quest hub for a few quests, I suppose, and at the end of the zone storyline I had to escort my Garrison's army to Karabor to help defend it, but that was really about it. In fact, in the Frostfire Ridge story, I mean, I got my Garrison, and then I didn't really do much that was of particular lore significance with my Garrison afterwards. So really, I don't think that it's needed, to have the Garrisons restricted in one zone for a lore purpose. And honestly, I think that this functionality would still be possible. You've got to remember that Blizzard are actually planning on having little mini outposts in every single zone in the game. So you'll have your Garrison in Shadowmoon or Frostfire, and then a little outpost in every other zone. You know what? Could I just not have my Garrison in Nagrand and a little outpost in Shadowmoon Valley? Because at the end of the day, from a story perspective, it still would have worked just fine. The only difference here is that we are not getting that freedom, and I think that freedom is really important. What I would suggest is basically they just allow us to put our main Garrison in any zone, and then just have outposts in other zones. This would fulfill all of their quest and story needs, while still allowing for player freedom. I think that the most ideal way of doing this would actually be to start Warlords of Draenor off as they do now. So you get into Frostfire, or Shadowmoon Valley, and then Durotan or Velen hands you your Garrison. That's fine, but once you get to level 100, just make it so that you can put your Garrison anywhere. If you need a lore justification, well, by the time you're level 100, you've went through every zone in Draenor, and you've already secured a location for your Garrison. So there really is no lore reason behind this. And in fact, right, while I've been exploring some of the zones in Draenor, I've noticed that there are Alliance and Horde Garrisons in every single one in the current build. This means that they have already done work on that feature, and I don't think it would be too hard for them to implement it. So yeah, a little bit of a pity the way that's all turned out. In my opinion, they can fulfill every single goal while still giving people lots of freedom, and that's extremely important. So now that point number 3 has been covered, let's move on to number 2, and that is customization. This one is so important, guys, and I'm just really concerned right now that Blizzard are not fitting the bill with it. So, we don't have a great deal of cosmetic options currently, and Blizzard have not talked much about the issue either. It's very important that players are able to customize their Garrison as much as is humanly possible. Hell, you could have different lampposts, you could have different banners, you could have maybe a different door on the front of your Garrison. You could have maybe different building variations. The actual options are just endless. You could have maybe a slightly different guard tower, or your actual guards could be wearing slightly different armor. Maybe you don't like the style of armor that's just of, the Stormwind variant, so perhaps you could just get some, maybe Northrend styled armor for your guards. Whatever the hell you want, just let people have the freedom, in my opinion. That's really important. And right now, the only thing that we can do is change what is in this little trophy plot. You'll probably see some background footage of that, so yeah, just look at that and you'll see what I mean. It really is unfortunate though, the way that they haven't talked much about it, and I'm just terrified that it could be a giant wasted opportunity. In addition to giving the player more options in terms of their customization, they could also use the Garrison feature to incentivize doing other forms of gameplay. So currently achievements are rather dull in the game, honestly, and for the most part, the only achievements that people particularly care about are the ones that reward a cool mount or title. The just crazy amount of possible Garrison customizations mean that Blizzard could actually make achievement hunting a lot more fun and a lot more rewarding. Look, Blizzard want people to play that game as much as they possibly can, so give people a reason. Of course, I would like it if they, as much as possible, try to make it, make sense, but at the end of the day, I don't care if maybe clearing Tempest Keep would give me a new kind of feckin' doorbell for my garrison. It would at least be something that I could achieve by going out into the world and playing the game. At the end of the day, that is what Blizzard cares about most. So they should definitely do that. Now, currently you do have a little bit of customization in that you can choose various buildings, and essentially this allows you to customize your gameplay in the you can choose between various buffs and resource benefits. This is fantastic, and I believe that while aesthetic customization is nice, gameplay customization is by far the most important kind of choice. But of course, as Transmog and Mount Collecting teaches us, players love to make their own character their own. They will want to make their own garrison their own garrison. And it's just important that Blizzard really allows us to do that. So the solution here is really quite simple. Just let people customize as many things as they can. Add lots of achievement-based things that tie back into your garrison's cosmetic look and feel. Providing it, of course, makes at least a little bit of sense. But even if it doesn't make sense, well, it's still more gameplay, it's still good. If garrisons are to be kept from expansion to expansion, then I think Blizzard should also work on adding racial variants to buildings and various things like that, but only if it doesn't eat into other types of content. Alrighty, that is the garrison customization point covered. It's now time to get into number 1. This is my biggest issue, right? And this is probably the longest point in this video, and that is what I'm going to call the Facebook issue. Now, saying Facebook game brings forth a lot of just horrendous connotations. I mean really bad ones. And I specifically mean the kind of thing that involves starting a task and then waiting a period of time for it to finish and getting a little bit of a reward at the end. This kind of design preys on people's love for acquiring things. And in the case of garrisons, it is follower levels, gear for your own character, and similar rewards like that. But I think the big problem is that the gameplay boils down to clicking on a table and opening a menu, then clicking on a few UI elements, then waiting a certain amount of time, clicking on the table again, clicking on a few more buttons, and being done. I don't think that this is a very engaging form of gameplay, as I think is really just blindly obvious. A, it's totally menu-based, and B, it doesn't involve doing anything with your actual character. Overall, this leads to a rather empty form of gameplay that keeps you coming back for this promise of an incremental upgrade, rather than keeping you coming back for the actual reward of playing a fun game that's enjoyable. Now, it isn't all bad, okay? So you can choose between different kinds of missions which suit the various traits of your followers. So there's a little bit of depth there in terms of how you gear up your followers and all of the various, perks of your followers. So sending a follower that hates orcs off to fight a mission that involves killing orcs. That's going to, give you a higher chance of success. So in addition to these missions, there are also kind of like rare missions. Now these will actually require more than one follower, and there's going to be a little more depth there in terms of the management and, pairing up the specific requirements of that mission with the strengths of your followers. Now that's great, it adds a little bit more management depth, but again, I just do not feel that it's going to be enough. Now I've actually been playing a game recently called Clash of Clans, and the reason I started playing it is because I was curious. It was what I just wrote off as being another cow clicker game, honestly, and I just wanted to know why it was good, or why people enjoyed it or played it so much. Now, it was really an experiment because I'm doing games development as a university course, and okay, while our course is all about programming, I still find it interesting, to examine these trends and find out why players do things. So what I've realized about Clash of Clans is that the resource acquisition is boring, and, building your base and all that is actually really okay because you can have different, defensive variations. But the cool thing about Clash of Clans, and this is actually where I think it beats the Garrison feature, hence why I bring it up, is that in Clash of Clans you can build up an army with a different composition, right? And you can send that army off to fight someone else's base. And of course you will place your troops in the battlefield and there's actual, some active gameplay there. Now I actually think that there is more gameplay in the Clash of the Clans base system than there is in the Warlords of Draenor mission system. So I'd love it if they could just expand upon things a little bit. Now, I know that unlike in Clash of Clans, we're going to have more gameplay buffs for our character, and of course this is really just a mini game, but I just thought that was a relevant point to bring up. The reason why the boring parts of Clash of Clans are okay is because when people actually get into attacking and defending bases, they enjoy that. Right now, in Warlords of Draenor for the Garrison system, it sort of just feels like you're doing the boring resource bit with missions, but you're not actually getting that fun battle at the end that's, the reason why you do those boring missions. Anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up. Now, let's just get back into the Warlords of Draenor specific stuff. So, if missions are to stay, as they currently are in the beta, then I can just see a sizable amount of players either not bothering with the whole endeavor, or just sort of doing it begrudgingly because they want some entry-level loot. In either case, I think that's a really poor outcome for the Garrison feature, and I do have one main suggestion for Blizzard that I think could definitely help out. And this is basically adding a new type of mission, which is a mission that involves your own player character. Now, this would not be every mission. In fact, it wouldn't even be most missions, because that would get horrifically tedious and not fun. Instead, I would have a rare type of mission that involves you, your own character, leading your followers on some sort of mission, scenario, style thing. Now, the actual traits of your followers could be exaggerated, so perhaps a healer follower could be very good at healing you up, and a DPS follower would be, of course, great at doing DPS. So, if you are a healer, then Blizzard could make it so that actually you need to heal, and you don't win by switching into your DPS spec. No, you win by healing up your followers and actually, enjoying the main gameplay of your specialization. If you're a tank, then of course you can gather up the enemy NPCs in one of these, special Garrison missions. And I'd say that these missions could also have maybe optional mini-bosses that would give you even greater rewards, or perhaps some heroic scenario-style bonus objectives. Of course, the missions themselves would be totally optional and not really required for anything, just that they would have, perhaps, better than average loot or something like that. So examples of these missions could in fact be attacking an enemy garrison or something like that. Maybe attacking an Iron Horde position or just a regular Horde/Alliance garrison. Perhaps it could be helping your faction's forces out on an open battlefield. There are many basic, things they could do here. Also, they could add a degree of randomization to these missions. It wouldn't be hard to do either. So, say this is a scenario that involves attacking a Iron Horde garrison style thing. Well, you could have 5 or 6 different variations on that scenario. Nothing massive, but perhaps slightly varying objectives. Maybe a different mini-boss, or a different layout to the garrison that you're attacking, or something like that. Basically, just so that they can keep it fresh and interesting. But I do just think that it's so important that we can do something with our own Garrison followers that involves our player character. That's just a key core thing that is missing at the minute, and that really makes me sad. I'm going to be honest here. In the alpha/beta, I have not been bothered to do many of these Garrison follower missions. Now, they are currently bugged at the minute in that you can't do them in the most recent build, but initially I started off doing these missions as much as I could, but then I just realized I couldn't be bothered, because they weren't particularly interesting or fun. They were not fun to do. Sure, I got some Garrison resources, and that, gave me more of a resource, or, more of a certain number, but at the end of the day, I didn't feel any enjoyment from that, and that is such just a core problem. It's a core design issue, really, and I'm just amazed that Blizzard haven't really said anything about it. And this is why I call it a Facebook game, in a way. Currently, this follower thing is just a Facebook game. It's like that thing that Assassin's Creed Brotherhood had, where you'd send your dudes off on missions. It just wasn't too interesting. And that's just disappointing to me, really disappointing. Now, of course, if there were these player-based things, you'd have really cool rewards and things like that. And I think one of the main reasons why I think this would be great is the Garrisons are going to be a major form of gameplay for a lot of people. Basically, the more casual players. Well, for them, Garrisons are going to be important, right? And I think that they deserve some gameplay like this. I don't think it's fair that there's going to be some people who just do LFR once, aren't too much into PvP, so their actual endgame involves either hunting for transmogs or just clicking some UI elements in their Garrison. No, let those players have some sort of epic Garrison siege where them and their followers go and do some sort of badass heroic thing. Just do that, Blizzard, please. It will make your Garrison system better, and it will make people more interested in it. Alright, so that's basically it. Really, that's the main part of my list. I'm sure I could nitpick various other things, but essentially, They need to fix that Facebook issue, they need to make Garrison missions more interesting. Then they need to give us more customization options. They, in my opinion, should open it up into more than one zone, as I highlighted in that point. They need to, at some point, consider adding guild stuff, or perhaps even PvP stuff. And then, the final thing is, they should just watch out for the next expansion, and make sure that if Garrisons are carried on, that they're actually carried on in a way that makes sense. Now, it may seem like I'm going on a major downer about Garrisons here. I'm not. I think they've got a lot of potential, and the reason why I'm being negative now is so that the final product can be better, and I just want to inform people about my opinions on the issue. Now, there will be a top 5 or whatever positive parts of the Garrison video that will come out at a later date, so stay tuned to that for the full-on balanced opinion. The reason I'm splitting it is because, honestly, ain't no one got time for a 50-minute video. I don't have time to make one all at once. So, that's basically it for me. Thank you very much for watching the video. The like button and all that stuff is really appreciated, and I will see you next time.